I love the scale at which you're speaking because that's just it's so big. Is it reasonable to think in those terms? Is it reasonable to think on a grand scale like that, where Bitcoin has the capacity to defund a military, essentially?
Yeah, well, let's talk about scale for a second. Let's talk about infinity. Okay, so with the protocol, you got a dual infinity at work. So on one hand, you have the insatiable appetite of the protocol for energy to drive hash rate higher. And hash rate is heading toward infinity. There's nothing that would stop hash rate from going toward infinity. And that would mean the price goes to infinity. There's a $400 trillion global market cap for stuff, right? Stocks, bonds, real estate. And the global economy is, you could say it's $400 trillion. So that's the total addressable market. So Bitcoin was at a trillion recently. It's under a trillion. Let's just say it's hovering around a trillion. So that's a 400x for Bitcoin price from the current price. So there's that infinite direction on the hash rate. Then on the other side of the scale, there's another piece of infinity, and it's infinitely small versus infinitely big. The infinitely small part of the protocol has to do with the target number that's adjusted every difficulty adjustment. So as hash rate and price go up, the target number gets smaller to make sure that there's an emission schedule every 10 minutes. And it approaches zero. It can't get to zero, theoretically, but it's constant. Let's call the zero the infinity bound. So, but it's always going to get closer and closer and closer to zero, to infinitely closer to zero. You know, it's Zenon's paradox on an infinite scale. It just constantly gets closer to zero. So you've got those two directions are going in kind of like opposite directions to infinity. You know, that's the scale that we're talking about. And in between is our life, is humans on planet Earth as we're experiencing this right now. It's cosmic. There's a cosmic scale to it on both. And if you think about our history, we've always had this twin cosmology going. You know, we've always been exploring the cosmos, outer space, and the solar system, and we've got probes, and we're looking at stars, and we've got the Hubble telescope, and we can map the cosmos. But we're also mapping the gene and the genome and the cell, and we're always in quantum probing, and we've got the gluon and the antiparticles and the antimatter and the subparticles, right? So we're always going in both directions all the time anyway. The infinitely small, infinitely large. And Bitcoin captures that. It's got the infinitely small target number and the infinitely large hash rate. So it's just ripping the cosmos a new asshole, essentially. And that's where we live.